you only know what you know, and if I'd known then what I know now, when I came out of the law, I would have bought a business. Quite simple.
So tell us what you did do.
I started a business.
Okay.
Because that was what you did. If you wanted to do something, you saw an opportunity in a market, you started a business.
Yeah.
So I actually went through that whole startup thing.
Yeah.
I understand how difficult it is. And also, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, the difficulties of organic growth.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, that just stopped the growth of the business that I started. We survived. It's still there, actually. But I was never able to achieve my potential, and the business never really achieved its potential organically. And I always knew there was something, but I didn't know what the answer was.
So let's just delve into that, because this is a great topic, I think, for the audience. I've held the belief now for some time that if you look at the marketplace, let's say you're an employee and you reach that point where I just don't want to do this anymore, I want to be on my own. And I'm good friends with Nigel Botterill, who founded the Entrepreneur Circle. Nigel talks about this as well, as kind of that urge to leave your employment. And I don't know if it was Nigel that coined the phrase, but somebody did anyway. It's like you leave your employer, who you varying degrees of how much you like them, but you kind of leave and then you go and work for a lunatic yourself, because you'll put yourself through more stress, pressure than you ever would have done for an employer, yet somehow it seems like the right thing to do. But my question to you, I guess, is, would you agree with me that when you're an employee contemplating the step, all of the information is about startup? Any information that is out there about advice and guidance on running a business is all focused on startup businesses.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes, it is. And actually these days, it's also this whole thing of portfolio lifestyles and self-employment and the gig economy.
Yeah.
So people are being pushed towards the idea of freedom being, I work for myself, I have several streams of income, but actually what these people are all doing is they're buying a job.
Yeah, exactly. So I've mentored a number of startup entrepreneurs, and I've been a startup entrepreneur myself. I've built 3 separate 7-figure businesses from scratch, so I know how hard it is. I've enjoyed success and failure, not quite in equal measure, but certainly some significant failure as well along the way. And so the risk factors of startup are really high, yet very few organizations promoting that idea of, be your own boss, ever talk about the failure factor. It's 50% of startups fail. The attrition rate is gruesome. And often people put their life savings, their assets at risk, their property and so on, and yet that's often kind of glossed over as being a really good thing. Was that your experience when
absolutely.
When you took that step?
Yeah, I mean, I went from a 6-figure salary effectively to 0 without even knowing when the next paycheck was going to come in.
Yeah.
As it was, we were quite lucky because it took us 3 months. After 3 months, we started seeing some money, and we were also lucky because the business I started, which I started with a partner, didn't have significant overheads. We were able to do it in such a way that it was, 2 people, 1 desk, which was free, a phone and a computer. Yeah, we were able to start a business like that. A lot of people can't do that because the thing that they want to do has overheads. It's, as I say, knowing what I know now, I would never advise anyone to start a business, because there are actually such incredible opportunities out there with businesses that are running already, but need someone else to take them over. Yeah,
we'll come back to that. But I just want to explore a little bit more your experience then of your startup. So you went from a secure but hard-pressed career as a lawyer and stepped into the world of self-employment, startup and so on. Tell us a little bit about how that went. I think it was legal recruitment?
Yes, it was. Okay. Yeah. It was. I actually went through an outplacement process when I left the law, because
Did your employers want to ease you out of the door by any chance? Was that an opportunity for you?
I think they call it a mutual decision in the end. There's a very long story there, but let's say it was a mutual decision.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say in their favour at the time was that they actually paid for me to do outplacement. That's how mutual it was.
Which is interesting. Sorry to jump in, but it's interesting because that's not all that uncommon, particularly with big corporates, not just law firms, but famously, I spent a long time in the military myself, and for regular servicemen and women, that's a significant part of their end of service process. Yet always, it seems to me that, those outplacement experiences steer people towards, let's start a business.
Yes, absolutely.
So all your money that you saved up and, your pension and all that kind of stuff, it's like, let's put that into what is in truth a really high risk strategy.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Would you agree?
And it was, the two options were be self-employed, start your own business. And it was just a question of in what. It was never raised, the opportunity to buy or buy into an existing business just wasn't there. And to be honest...
And how old were you when you made the transition, so from employment to...
I was 43 when I set up the business.
And did that feel like starting again? Did it feel like a big opportunity? Were you excited, or were you in trepidation in equal measure? What was the emotion around that transition?
It was incredibly exciting, actually.
Yeah.
I think I was lucky in that I had some money behind me. So I knew I could live for 6 months.
Okay.
I could pay the mortgage for 6 months.
So you had 6 months, this has got to work.
Absolutely. And there was no safety net.
Yeah.
There was I didn't have anything else. So the boats were burned.
So if you'd got to 6 months, what was plan B?
There was no plan B.
Okay.
But I had the confidence that I knew enough about the market I was getting into. I saw a big opportunity there.
Yeah.
I had the confidence that it was going to work. So actually, it may have been ignorance rather than anything else, ignorance of risk.
Yeah.
But I had total confidence that it was going to come off.
I think it's really interesting because, like you, I've met a number of people. So your experience, Nigel at Entrepreneur Circle talks about this. He left a high-paid, 6-figure salary job to found, the bit before the Entrepreneur Circle, I forget the name, but it was that thing of this has to happen, this has to work, and that kind of burning of bridges is really quite interesting. And my original, I wouldn't say mentor, but the guy that I learned a lot from, Dan Pena, also talks about that. If you're holding on to a branch over here, you're never going to make that transition. You've got to let go, and that's a scary place, but can be very exciting as well. But that making that conscious transition, I think, is really significant. And when you're in that place where I'm just at the point of I've had enough, I'm going to do this, but it's natural human reaction to kind of go, but what if? And I think it's that element of how do you get that what if out of your head? For you, was it a business plan? Was it having a partner, that someone that you could work alongside? What were the factors that gave you the confidence aside from just you knew your market? Were there other components to that gave you the springboard?
At the time, having a partner helped.
Yeah.
And I'd actually waited, because I had the opportunity to do it slightly earlier, but I didn't want to do it on my own because I didn't want the isolation of sitting in a room on my own.
Yeah, talking to yourself.
Yes, I didn't want that. I wanted someone else to bounce it off, but it had to be like-minded person, and it took me a while to find that individual.
Yeah.
Once I'd got that in place, I'd already seen I'd seen an opportunity in the market. And basically, this was recruitment, and it was legal recruitment. Yeah. And as working as a lawyer, I had been recruited, so I'd seen the people who were in the market already.
Yeah.
I'd seen what the top end of that looked like, headhunting in that space. I'd been a candidate of headhunters, and I'd also used headhunters as a client as well, so I'd seen both sides of that.
Yeah.
And I thought, these guys are okay, but it could be done better.
Yeah.
And there's a big opportunity here because there's not a lot of people doing it. It's a big market, it's a growing market. So all that stuff I saw, which is that's why I was so confident. We didn't have a written plan.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a written budget when we started because we didn't know how quickly it was going to go or where it was going to go. We just believed between the two of us that this was a significant opportunity and we could take advantage of it.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's delve into that a little bit then. So you've got the plan, you're all excited, you found your partner, you've got the outplacement paid for, so you've got some of that sort of key components in place. By your own admission, no particular plan, but you're pretty clear about what you were going to do and you dived in. And I want to pick up on something that you said, which was quite interesting, which is we believed that we could do it better. What was your experience then of taking the idea? Were you able to execute doing it better? Or did you find any other challenges in that journey? What was your experience starting with the idea and turning it into reality?
Yeah, I think we were able to execute it, not because of, as it turned out, not because of technical skill or technical expertise. It was actually because we cared about what we were doing. And that was what a lot of people in that industry don't do.
Yeah.
They take a very short-term, very financially driven short-term view of life.
Yeah.
And myself and Alex, my partner at the time, naturally we took a longer-term view. We were more interested in lifetime customer value rather than what can we get out of this transaction. And actually that was what made the difference. It was more our attitude and mindset to the process rather than something technical.
Which is really interesting because we're going to explore this in a subsequent discussion. And that idea of a kind of values-based transaction as opposed to a numbers-based transaction. So what's emerging from the conversation is your philosophy is actually underpinned by human value rather than pounds, shillings and pence. And it's, for me, that for viewers who watch me lots of times will know our whole business model is around values-based transactions. It's interesting listening to you, you're saying essentially that was the same thing, that the longer-term financial component would take care of itself if you focused on the values. Is that a fair translation?
Yeah. It's cause and effect. If you work on the cause, the effect will happen.
Yeah.
The problem with a lot of people, I've got a live example going on right now, is that people get fixated on the effect, which is often, I want to earn more money now. Well, that's not a cause. You wanting to earn more money now is not actually going to help you do it. What you've got to do is almost forget that and think, okay, there's a certain set of things I need to do, and if I do those things right, value and money will flow from that.
Almost the same thing as professional footballers. You know, they have their eye on the prize of, you know, high money because it's out there, forgetting the fundamentals of performance on the pitch. Consistency of performance increases your value. I love the story. For those who don't know, I'm a Liverpool fan. Well, Terry, my partner, would laugh at me. Fan, follower, believer, whatever. And this year we finally won the Premier League. So really, really exciting. But I love the stories underneath it. And Henderson, as the team captain, is a really good example of that. Watch some of the discussions around him and his tenacity and his willingness to keep working hard. Maybe not the most gifted player, maybe not the player that you would immediately think of as scoring amazing goals, but his commitment to the team and his commitment to his craft is for me is a really good example of a better way to think about what all of us do. And I guess to some extent that's what you looked for in your candidates, is that right? Is that sort of finding the candidates that had a similar philosophy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, apart from anything else, you tend to gravitate towards like-minded people.
Yeah.
You like spending time with like-minded people.
Yeah.
So I was looking for, whether it was firms or whether it was individual lawyers, looking for firms that shared that same approach, which is, yes, the short term can't be ignored, but actually it's the long term that's important, and we've got to build the foundations for that.
Did you ever turn anyone away? Did you ever find yourself actively saying, I don't want to work with you?
Yeah.
Candidates or clients?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both. And that's because if you if you can't relate to someone on a values level, then ultimately you're not going to serve them very well. And either you or they is going to feel let down by the transactions and the relationship, whatever follows, because you can never meet their expectations, and they can never meet yours.
Yeah. Very often I've found businesses start because it's the thing, like you were a lawyer, so you understand lawyers, you understand the recruitment process. So let's start a recruitment company, so you're the doer of the thing. But in running a successful business, there are lots of other components, aren't there? So just talk me through your experience of that whole transition from the idea, the startup, and then the reality of running a business.
Yeah. And the big problem that I had, and to be honest, it's dogged me throughout the life of that business, is spending too much time being the doer and not spending enough time developing the business and not being able to get away from the coalface, which is a problem in lots of small businesses, but particularly in a professional services type business where it's almost expected. And I'd been taught as a lawyer that you lead from the front. So when you're a partner, you lead the team, but you bill more than everyone else. That was how I was
You're
raised.
The big chief.
So and you lead by example. So how can you ask your team to spend lots of chargeable hours and send out lots of bills if you're not doing it? But
that means that you're working in the business. You're always in it, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, and it's not. I've just been reading something recently on this, actually, this distinction between on and in and what that's all about. But it's not just being in it, but it's too deeply in it. It's more about wearing the wrong hat in the business rather than working in the business. So I was very much wearing an operator hat, not an owner hat and not an investor hat. And I knew, I mean, the frustrating thing about it was I knew I was doing it. But almost powerless to do anything about it. I couldn't stop. Because once you get into that mindset, then you realise that no one else can do it as well as you. So anyone else you bring in and start to try and develop, they can't do it like you do it. So you then take it back in.
And you're on that kind of cycle, that hamster wheel, aren't you? It's like,
it's horrendous.
I've got to be doing this to generate the revenue. The revenue is my living. I want to get off that hamster wheel so I can improve the business processes to regenerate the hamster wheel. But in the meantime, the hamster wheel is going to grind to a halt and I've got no living. So it's like, how do I break out of that? And I love the, I think it might be a Disney or a Pixar movie. It's like, I forgot what it's called now. It's kind of pets at home thing. And there's this great line of this hamster on the wheel, and he goes, I run and I get nowhere. And it's great, and I know what that's like. It's a real challenge.
It's awful. And I'd had the business for 12 years before it really hit me. I woke up one morning, this was in 2016. I'd been unhappy for a while and frustrated for a while, but couldn't put my finger on it. And I woke up one morning and I just went, hang on a minute. These people, we had like a dozen people in the business. And I was thinking, these people are not working for me. I'm working for them. It was completely the wrong way around. And I was the hamster on the wheel, trying to keep the wheel spinning enough to generate the cash to pay their wages. And none of them was as committed as I was. None of them was generating money like I was. None of them really cared anything like as much as I did, obviously because I was the owner. And I just realised everything was completely upside down. And then it's the thing with business is you always are where you are. So you can't just say, okay, stop, cut. I want to start
Press
again.
Pause.
I want to start again from somewhere else because you are where you are. So you've got to, wherever that is, however painful it is, you've got to dig yourself out of that if you want to get back to the start point even for where you want to get to. So that was what I was faced with. So that was probably the first step on the journey that's brought me from the startup and being a successful operator to where I am now.
That's been brilliant, Phil. So that's neatly brought us to 2016. We're going to press pause at that point. We're going to come back. There's some brilliant topics to explore in the next video. So I want to thank you for your openness and a fascinating discussion of kind of your journey from employee to business owner, but actually owning a job. I think it's a fair description. And the light bulb moment that hit you in 2016. We're going to press pause there. Thanks very much, Phil. And then in the next video, we'll explore what happened next.